like a lion on the prowl. Take back our kids, bring them home now. Constitution, strong blood won't lie. No more corruption, let freedom fly. Loud and on fire, won't back down. Keeping the faith here in this town. Apple pie dreams under a southern sky. American man with a fierce battle cry. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with a strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Fierce in heart and steady in soul. Families united, make the broken whole. Justice for all, America strong. Sing this anthem loud, sing our song. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with a strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with a strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Take a stand. Running for CPS like a lion on the prowl. Take back our kids, bring them home now. Constitution, strong blood won't lie. No more corruption, let freedom fly. Loud and on fire, won't back down. Keeping the faith here in this town. Apple pie dreams under a southern sky. American man with a fierce battle cry. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with a strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay, no more broken past. Faith and hope, never too far. Return our kids, make them the stars. Fierce in heart and steady in soul. Families united, make the broken whole. Justice for all, America strong. Sing this anthem loud, sing our song. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with a strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like
Um, Hopefully, you guys can hear me. Yes, no? Yeah, okay. We got a thumbs up. Okay. Uh, Welcome to Gunning for CPS. I am Gunner, your host. Tonight, we have a couple of special guests joining us this evening. Our topic for this evening, we're going to gear more towards the healing end of our program, which we'll be able to is one of the core roles that we take and do here. And our topic for tonight is going to be on circles and boundaries. And I'd like to welcome to the show Sharon Evers, my wife, that she has a degree in psychology and early childhood development, has several different experiences with children, special needs children, worked in and around homes, EMT training, so on and so forth. A mother of three children with several children on what we will call the spectrum or the scale of autism. Sharon, welcome.
Hi.
And also backstage here, we have Darren is backstage doing a few things. Darren, just when you're ready to chime in, pop in. Vinny, here we go. There you go. There's Vinny.
Yeah, you caught me in the middle of eating my homemade pulled pork.
Oh, look out. We caught him eating some supper here.
Good stuff.
Well, guys,
Yeah.
our, con- our concept for tonight is going to be something called circles and boundaries. It's something that Sharon and I have discussed over the years. It's something that I was brought up to believe in of circles and what those circles mean. She did an excellent rendering, I believe it was a post on TikTok, Facebook, and a few others to kind of share that. And it was a maze to me what people didn't understand about circles, let alone boundaries. But let's introduce this first to the circles part. Sharon, why don't you take the lead on that and let's discuss circles?
Okay. Do you want me just to
Pop
do the
into it. I'm going to go find you that little diagram with the circles to kind of help better illustrate.
Okay. So like Gunnar said, he actually taught this to me in this way. And I took the concept and tried to simplify it, especially to teach the kids. And so we start out with our first circle, and our first circle is the circle that is closest to you. So these are like circles of trust. So in your first circle, typically you will have your significant other, spouse, partner, whomever. Hopefully that's a person that you can trust. Hi Herbert. Hi everybody. Um, your children tend to be put into the first circle by default because you are responsible for them. And I like to say my children are in first circle training. Um, our family specifically builds our first circle off of character qualities such as honor, integrity, respect, honesty. So we don't, in our first circle, we don't tell lies, we don't keep secrets. Those are really important things. Like we have to be able to trust each other. And this is how I teach my kids that. In my specific first circle, I have my husband, I have my sister, and I have my really close friend. We've been through a lot together, but it can look different for everybody. So then our second circle is going to be family members that may not typically like be in your household or very close to you, but you can still trust them. It can also be really close friends, people that you're in and out of each other's homes, that you hang out with, but you don't necessarily share like your closest, deepest, darkest thoughts and secrets with or whatever. So that's your first and second circle. Um, Another thing to remember with the circles is they can be fluid. People can move from circle to circle depending on the situation. So our third circle is going to be people uh, who you interact with on a regular basis, but you don't necessarily aren't very close with. So that could be your coworkers, that could be people you interact with on a regular basis at, I don't know, really, honestly. Um, coworkers is one of the first ones I think of. It could be distant cousins. It could be people that are part of your life but aren't necessarily like specifically in your life, if that makes sense. The fourth circle is going to be reserved for strangers or for people you interact with very minimally, specifically like your the cashier at the grocery store, or your mailman, or your bank teller, or people that you come into interaction with but you aren't necessarily inviting over for dinner. And I specify all of these specifically for especially the kids to understand, because as children, they want to interact with people, but you can't trust everybody. And so I set up the circle system so that I could easily say to them, this person belongs in first circle. You can trust them. They're your safe person. They're okay. Or this person is in fourth circle. We don't really interact with them. We see them once in a while. We recognize their faces, but they're not somebody we tell our life story to. And then our fifth circle is reserved for people who either by choice choose to walk out of your life, or by behavior you have to remove from your life. We've had a few of these over the years, and I've had to explain to the children that people in fifth circle, they are people who either disrespect us, cross our boundaries, or choose to walk out of our life for any given reason. It's important to know, and they know, that a person in fifth circle can choose at any given time to come back, but it has to, the requirement is that they have to do the work to heal themselves and to understand boundaries and to be respectful when they come back.
So let me reiterate that the only people by default that get a placement in the circle, let alone to the inner circle, is only your children, just by default. That all others have basically earned their spot based on their responses or their actions.
Yes.
Have determined where they've placed themselves. Now, you're saying children's the only one exempt, so that means we're actually telling our listeners too. That means this includes family.
Yes.
Blood.
Yes, absolutely. So children are put in first circle by default. Usually it's your own children. It could be very close nephews or nieces or somebody, or friends, close children, if you are that close with your friend. The reason being is that they are under your protection, but they are also in training. So like all of our children are in training for first circle spots. Like they're taught the behaviors of respect. They are taught the behaviors of honor and integrity, of honesty, and they're taught boundaries. And so all of my children know that when their behavior is inappropriate, I will turn around and tell them that is fifth circle behavior. We don't do that. And they understand, oh, this can get me removed out of the circle. We don't want to be removed out of the circle. And they know this because we've actually had to set that example with a few people in our lives that we don't talk to anymore.
So to get this, now to go through some of the history, this is some of the things that when the family existed before legislation, and it predates it, that's why we are here now. Before this, historically speaking, this was taught as a family thing, or people you could trust. In other words, you don't go outside the family. You don't trust anybody but blood, those type of things. But that depended on the leadership. And what we've come to find out, I think, where this circle thing applies more, especially today, is the fact you question the leadership of everything within it. In other words, you're not just taking somebody's word at face value. You're able to articulate when it's something serious, such as a boundary violation, or I'm moving you, say, from second circle to third circle. You're not talking, this is not an easy shift to be pushed out. You've done something massive to violate my trust in the safety of my inner circle or my people. And it doesn't matter who that is. It could be a mother-in-law, it could be a mother, a father, anything else. And a
Yeah.
lot of this has to do with, this is why we've tied these two together, with boundaries. Now, how does boundaries, one, what is boundaries? Number two, how does boundaries affect the placement in the circle and what happens?
Yeah. So boundaries are extremely important. So boundaries are just what they sound like. They're a boundary. So this is what you set up for your life, and where you're comfortable and how you want people, basically how you want to be treated by other people. And it can be as simple as stating, you know what? I'm really overstimulated today. I really don't want to talk right now. I need an hour. That's a boundary. Another type of boundary could be, for example, okay, so I've set one, while I am currently separated from my husband. I have set the boundary that no man comes into my house unless I'm related to him, like my father is always
Mhm.
welcome. My father, my brothers, family that is trusted. Or if you are a contractor or repairman who has a scheduled appointment to be here, otherwise you are either here with your wife and or children, or you are not here at all. Because that is a boundary that I feel like I need, in a vulnerable situation where I don't want to welcome trouble and I don't want to invite trouble and I don't want to disrespect my husband. So boundaries can be pretty much anything you want and you set in your life. The important thing to remember with boundaries is that boundaries come with communication, and this is where a lot of people make mistakes. We've all done it. If you do not clearly state your boundary, then you cannot expect the other person or people to know that that is a boundary.
Let's also make sure, just so we're clear, that our viewers also understand, you can have temporary boundaries
Yes.
and permanent boundaries. In other words,
Yes.
let me give you, I think one great example is, I'm pretty good with most people, but you get me in a very large room of people, I begin to feel uncomfortable. Therefore, my boundaries have changed and I've become more, I want more space versus I having all those people in on you, or people come up that get real touchy or this, and they say, listen, I just don't want to be touched. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to understand, especially grandparents, of going, I'm overstimulated, and there's where your communication is clear.
Yes.
I'm overstimulated. This is how we're clear with our communication, other than don't touch me. Do you see the difference on how that works even within our relationships?
Yes.
And this is why everybody amazed with you and I is we have that extra step. Okay, wait a minute. Why can't I touch you? Not just because I just don't want to be touched. It's clear to communicate. I'm feeling a little overstimulated right now, and I just can't. And
Yeah.
if you work with your partner, the point of working together with your partner and even with your kids on how to clearly communicate those things, other than just say, I'm just not gonna, and you go into the definition of why, now you've clearly communicated with the other person, okay, we have an issue here, such as a physical condition or mental health condition. And this is how we become more aware of the world around us when
Yes.
we learn to properly communicate, because you can say, hey, listen, man, that loud noise bothers me. Why? I have PTSD because I was in a military unit and it just brings back some bad memories. When you can communicate that to people clearly, they begin to understand and have, I want to say, some will have sympathy if they've been through that, and empathy if they have not, hopefully, and give a certain amount of respect and protection for those things, and some commonality of just being polite or being basically just being a decent fucking human.
Yeah.
Um,
So that is something that I've had to work on while we teach the circles and our boundaries. We teach our kids to speak their boundaries very clearly, to the point that they can. Now, Debbie, you said your grandson has global developmental delay. I also have a son who has a lot of developmental delays. And for him to clearly speak a boundary is very difficult some days. We've done better as he's grown. He's learned a lot more of these skills, but it's very hard for them. And so sometimes their behavioral, you have to learn to read their behaviors, which I'm sure you know. Because a lot of times what people will take as negative behavior is actually one of these kids or persons trying to set a boundary without understanding how to set a boundary. And so that's where asking questions is also
you said that we both know, but our audience doesn't. We train a lot of this for our kids, but this is a preparation also for boundaries also, because it also helps you understand about constitutional rights.
It does.
So now there was an instance where with your daughter, we'll just go with your daughter, had an instance where somebody from CPS or CAC or something tried to coerce, get your daughter to say, I'm part of your inner circle. This is one of the tricks of CPS, though. I'm a trusted person. And this is what we're talking about, why you set boundaries, because I love the fact when you told the story of what her response was or what you said, and how we were reinforcing that we were teaching our kids, their constitutional rights, such as, I don't have to talk to you. Your children don't have to talk to anybody. But share that story of what the situation was. I think they'll get a kick out of it.
When it comes to my children in therapy, I have always told them, I've told them this with anybody. If you are ever uncomfortable with somebody or uncomfortable speaking to somebody, you do not have to talk. You do not have to say anything. You may say that I am uncomfortable. You may say, I don't want to talk about that. You may say, I would like to find my mom now if I'm not like right in the room with them.
Your right to counsel?
What?
And that would be called your right to counsel. You're teaching your children, you have a right to counsel. I don't feel comfortable enough to have enough information. I need to seek better counsel.
Yes. And it also, honestly, it kind of trains them up for the Fifth Amendment as well. Plead the Fifth. Like, if you are not comfortable with this person or you are not comfortable in your situation, you have the right not to say anything. I have always taught my children that.
And see, this is one of the biggest things CPS takes in, is stamps on, is you don't have a right not to say no. You don't have a right not to tell me I can't this. Your child can't do that. Matter of fact, we got a report, I believe that I shared with you earlier today, that CPS is even bribing children of the teenage values with illegal substances, drugs.
Unbelievable.
To testify against other people. I'm like, this is something that's getting to hit like all over and blow counties up, let alone, it took three caseworkers to go after this person. And still stood their ground with their constitutional rights. And
so my daughter decided that she did not want to talk to this
person.
Forced therapy. We were in forced therapy. And she decided that she didn't want to talk about anything with this person. She wasn't comfortable, which is her right. And so they pulled me in and they told me, why aren't you telling your daughter that she can tell us anything and that she's safe here?
You hear this? CPS is wanting to manipulate your family's sanctity, the sanctity of the family. Make me the qualifications under threat or duress. Make me an inner circle person. If you had anybody else try to force themselves in and they didn't say, I'm a representative of the government, what would you do?
Nothing.
If you kept forcing your way in, that would be called enough for the Second Amendment to be called in to defend yourself.
Yes. So we have actually established that anybody from CPS at this point, all of my children know they're fifth circle people. We don't talk to them.
Now, that's something that they have not. Let's clarify. This is not something, and so people don't misconstrue. This is where a lot of CPS will say, well, you condition them to do this and that. Let's reiterate that to be very clear.
I didn't condition them to anything. Our boundaries were crossed and we were disrespected, and therefore you don't have a right to our inner circle, and you don't have a right to our second circle or even our third. You have the right to our fifth circle because you're not safe.
Yeah. Because of what? Not what mom told them, but because what they experienced with the individual people and the way they were treated.
Very much so. All of my children have had complaints about these people and how they were treated and how they felt. They did not feel safe. They did not feel protected. They did not feel any of that. So,
Vinny, where'd you go, buddy? I know he's back there somewhere. He's waving. All right, I'm going to pull Vinny in here. My boy Vinny. Now, I'm going to catch you eating your sandwich. You're licking your lips. The barbecue sauce is gone.
Yeah.
So how do you think, I mean, just listening to some of the topics here, what if I know we've all talked about this wasn't really explained to a lot of us growing up or any of these other things that so many people violate. But how do you feel being where you're at, and then now hearing stuff like this of going and taking that time to reflect, of saying, I wish somebody would have told me that and I could have trained my children for that. It probably would be in a worst case scenario even in this case.
Absolutely, because then my kids would actually know what to look for and what not to look for.
Well, and you've dumbed down, like what Sharon was saying, whether you know it or not, some of the things you do. And this is, as parents, we could turn around and say, you have a right not to talk to anybody. Matter of fact, can tell them, even as children. And that even goes to their teachers or anything. I have a Fifth Amendment right not to talk to you. And you can't violate that right. It doesn't matter what I'm here for. If I don't wish to talk, I don't have to, but they don't want. We were assuming as parents a lot. I know I did. I mean, we had classes for it and this and that, but they don't nowhere near get you the depth of what do you do when somebody knocks on your door or does this or that. And you have CPS workers. It goes to even the greatest extreme. You have people with a college education and master's degrees with some of them that have no concept of constitutional rights, that they are coming in houses across this country with no warrant, no court order that is mandated or emergency to even enter the home. You'll hear them testify over and over again. Well, I brought it up, but the caseworker lied about it and says, I gave them permission. Well, if you know what, here's where it comes down to case law. Unless you can quote the specific case law to say, and here's the other problem. That family court, that civil court, has no jurisdiction on federal constitutional matters or violations thereof. That means that your court should have a change of jurisdiction based off the fact of your local court does not have the ability or the jurisdiction to rule on constitutional matters. Now, when you go into that court, you have to stop everything. And this is where it's really hard for a lot of people. Keep it just about the Constitution. As soon as you mention family law, Rooker versus Feldman kicks in and they throw your case out. How many people I've said, well, I filed it, but I filed it under this and I filed it under that. Well, did you mention your family court or anything to do with that? No. You have to describe your officers or attorneys or anything as elected and appointed officials and government representatives. You have to watch what you say. As soon as you specifically, you do it specific, it's thrown out. When you're general, see, that's the funny thing about writing a lot of these case laws and everything else. Are you being specific about a specific topic? And I know Darren will jump in here probably sometime and say, yep, that's right. Is it specific or you want to be general? Because they bring the same arguments up when they question you. It's bringing into question or reasonable doubt or shoulda, coulda, woulda, or you put it all together. Or there's enough in here to, file criminal charges. Well, federal cases work different than the other. You have to basically, unless it's a direct threat to the country, you have to win your case to establish evidence in a federal civil court, unless it's causing somebody harm like a bomb threat or something. And then use that evidence from your civil case you present, is what the DOJ and FBI will do, is then they will take that to a grand jury for an indictment to get you arrested and go through the criminal action. They won't do it any other way. Why? Because that's what they've told us. which is why they're anxiously awaiting our particular case, let alone our big case, Vinny. They're just standing by. Once you get it all sewn in, or we get something from the court too, because you got to understand, you're a judge, that here's your case, that here's it, especially in the federal, and there's criminal and you're in civil, can write a letter of recommendation, or in a to certain powers that be of the DOJ. There are topics that were covered in this civil case that includes criminal activity or evidence of criminal activity. Why? It's now been entered on the court record. They don't even have to contact the person, go do or collect the evidence themselves. They just scrape up all the meats and potatoes like a biscuit, sopping up the gravy the last little bit to get that indictment. But guys, that's how far they'll bring it. But the understanding too, CPS doesn't even understand boundaries. You don't understand the boundaries of the home. But how would that take and affect us that we're teaching our children constitutional stuff while we're teaching them core values of circles? And this is why we put it out to you guys, when you get your kids back home, or you're going through those things, establish this thing with circles and boundaries and why it's so important. Because Vinny, I don't know
even just
how many
for
times
the kids though, it's for all of us. And I mean, I say we do it with the kids, but I had to learn it too, because I wasn't taught this as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, this is for everybody. So, and Jamie, yes, the kids are people. They have their own feelings. If you're teaching them some of the stuff from early on, they'll already know how to hold some of their boundaries. And yes, you will be blamed for it. I got blamed for a lot of things too. That's just, it's a psyops. That's what they're looking for, any kind of weakness. And they are going to have you tied up in knots. They're going to make you feel like shit, and you are going to feel like you made all the mistakes and did all the wrong things. It's probably not true.
No. Now, Jamie Johnson, your comment there that kids have their own feelings. Yeah, you got blamed for the dislike of DCS. Man, you don't have to do anything to exposure. It's kind of like, let's call it like it is. It has nothing to do with feelings. It has to do with facts. And that's what your courts are supposed to be about, are facts and what you can prove in court. And that's why they fight in these family courts, or the states created the family court systems, because it became a profit generating system that they make a lot of money.
Well, it's supposed to be based off facts, but it sure seemed like they were working off of feelings. Like, they know where to push the buttons. They do it purposefully.
Well, once again, what are your degrees in? Psychology. Most of them, they want to know how to manipulate someone psychologically. I mean, there are books today written all over the place, whether you like it or not, on how to manipulate and control people. You do it through Men for Women, for finding women. You have Women for Men on how to, abuse them for getting what you want, or all these other things. But understand this thing, this one basic concept of getting something from somebody else through the sense of delusion is a sense of thievery or robbery. You're not being human.
I was actually told, I kid you not, because I brought up this, and I guess this is the beautiful thing. The Constitution, if you really look at it, is actually the protection of our boundaries in a lot of ways. And if you kind of like see it that way, it's kind of what it does. And I actually brought up this with somebody, gosh, it may have been my attorney, I don't know. But I had mentioned the fact that, like, they're walking all over our boundaries. They're walking all over my kids. They're walking all over me. They're just like, they're walking right through all of the boundaries we have up. And I was told that the court doesn't deal with boundaries. I was saying, like, how can the court not deal with boundaries? If you look at the Constitution very clearly respects and protects our boundaries.
Matter of fact,
courts do not respect and protect our boundaries.
What the consequences are. And that's something that a lot of people have alluded. These people that are committing treason and sedition, especially with dealing with children, there's only one thing. You got 5 choices of way to die, and it's at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, because once you're convicted of treason and sedition, and once you're accused of treason, here's the thing that most people don't realize. When you start screaming treason and you have evidence of it, it just gets reviewed by the U.S. Attorney's Office. If it is deemed as being treason or sedition, you then have no rights when you're taken into custody, and you get a military tribunal.
Yeah.
Not before a judge, no plea bargains, no bullshit. You're going to be right there at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, waiting to hear your number next of which one of the 5 choices you want and what's your last meal. And when all this stuff is revealed, we're going to be opening that pathway to Gitmo real fast with a lot of people and a lot of people snitching of how far up this goes, because these people realize what's attached to this. And I don't think these caseworkers have a clue what they're being told to do and the stuff that they're doing. Because once they're caught and they're called out, guess what? That's it. The only thing they can claim is, well, I was trained that way. Well, great. But still, nobody told you to make that thing. You should use, that should have been common sense as an American. Here's the problem I got. Constitutional things are absolute. So why are we as states, countries, or anything else constantly questioning the absolution document that everybody's supposed to live by? Why would I want to taint any part of it? Because it gives me my freedoms. It gives you your freedoms.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're black, yellow, white, all that stuff goes on. I don't care what you say. Those rights are inalienable across the board for male, female, all the way across the board. Anybody that claims, well, I want my rights. No, you're wanting special privileges. Unless you don't have the right to vote or the right to go to work or some of these other things, you have the same right as everybody else. And you can cry privilege all you want. Let me tell you where, you want to talk about this? I was born, Irish and, in a big city. Let me tell you something. You better do some research on Irish slaves in big cities like New York, Chicago, this and that. You thought slavery was bad with people of color. Oh boy, you hear some of the stories that were done to the Irish and the Italian immigrants. And there's a history of it, but they're not going to tell you about it. Why? Because then you'd find out that everybody of every color, every religion, every creed has at one time throughout history been in slavery.
Oh, bottom line, slavery has never gone away. It's just been rebranded. But Herbert's right. These people are trained on how to manipulate people. And they're very good at it. They're very good. That's why I say it's a psyops. They're trained to psychologically manipulate parents and children. And this is why they like to separate us. They don't like us all in the same room together at all.
Kim, let me address something. Let me read this, and you'll get a kick out of this. Kim Andrews says they need to make a law that social workers need to wear body cams from start to finish every time they approach someone. This should be the law. No, ma'am. Our position is these people have no right under the Constitution unless a crime has been committed and you're in criminal court and been convicted, because you're innocent until proven guilty. They do not have the right to come in and do anything. They have tricked you with your marriage license and consider your marriage like a business and look at you as property, and your children are assets. And when you get that marriage license, you involve everything that you have called down. They say, well, you participated. You've participated unknowingly. Then you have to turn around and say, hey, I've been contracted, without knowing the extent of the contract. It's a huge argument because a lot of people are going through it. I didn't do it. What gives them the right? What's the first thing they go after? Social Security numbers. And here's the thing. Did you know you're not supposed to give out your spouse's Social Security number? And if you have, it's coercion to do that, and that's Social Security fraud if you didn't get it from the person.
Yeah, I didn't know that when they made me.
So once again, that's a federal crime.
Listen, people, mistakes have been made. It is not your fault. They are very good at what they do.
Caseworkers should not have body cams. They should not be in business at dealing with families. Here's why. Because unless I have damaged property or proof, now this is proven in court, guilty until you're innocent until proven guilty. You're not guilty before innocent, and you have to prove your innocence. The burden is on the court of every time or the other person. Then why do you feel like you're going into family court fighting for your lives if it's up to them to prove to something when you know they don't have something and all the dirty things? Why can't it be an open thing? Because they can't make money that way. No. When you find a way to put your children, and here's another thing you can look into, trust law. Put your children in trust. Take control of their Social Security number and everything else. That means the state can't touch them. They're in trust law. The things to do with the state has to do with contract law. Trust law is above contract law. It supersedes it. You can't breach it with another contract. It has to go through the trust. Why do you think so many wealthy families, everything's in trust, even their children, which is why they don't go after them. That's why you wonder why they don't mess with the rich people. Their children are in trusts. So's their social security numbers, and they have it filled out and legally documented properly. But are they going to share that with you and me? No. Why? Because if you find out a way to take and do that, they wouldn't come near it. But here's the biggest thing. Why they shouldn't operate, or even body cams. Here's why. I don't trust you, and all of you are criminals because you've already broken the Fourth Amendment on every single case that you've handled. And I know where to look for the evidence to hang it on every single caseworker across this country. It's called your fact report.
If you think about your Fourth Amendment, which is what again?
Entry in the home.
There we go.
Documents everything in the home that feels safe and secure and everything else.
So that's like basic home front boundaries, right? Like
This
you
is my
don't
home.
let somebody into your home unless you know that they're a trusted person or you have a reason for them to be there. Like you don't just let anybody into your home.
Which is
And
why
this
the
is
Fourth
something-
Amendment was created.
And this is something like I teach my kids. I've had to learn somebody who is willing to step over your boundary or walk through it, such as put their foot over your threshold without your permission, can be considered a lot of different things here, people. That's not a safe person.
Now, Herbert, I agree that a camera body cam shows everything in what was said, but now you're looking at the integrity of that, and it's also been the same for law enforcement, and it's been documented several times that they have the ability to turn them on and turn them off. Those are things that multiple body cameras, especially for law enforcement, should be turned on and off at the beginning of the shift with a code, so they don't have a chance to switch them on and off. And the batteries and everything else should take and last the same way. Now, as far as CPS is concerned, they shouldn't be involved unless, like I said, there is a crime. I've damaged property or I've injured someone, and it's in a criminal court in the proper jurisdiction. Civil court is meant for contracts and businesses. It's exclusively what it was created for. That was it. That was it. Matter of fact, I was having a conversation with Kim, and I know I'm going to break a lot of hearts and hurt a lot of people's feelings, but you get all this thing with women's rights and women's rights to vote. What if I told you every bit of that was a fucking lie? It had nothing to do with that. You know what it was about? It was giving them the right to own property. With that came the right to vote. They were hand in hand. So they said, well, since they go hand in hand, we'll just make it all about women's right to vote. No, it was about here in America, there was a time when you got married, everything was in a man's name. And when a man died, a woman couldn't own property in the United States. It's one of our histories. It's a historical fact. The parts of the rights to the women was to turn around. I want land ownership. Well, back then, the way you got to vote was basically if you were a landowner. So it went hand in hand. If you're a landowner or property owner, you can now vote. It's the only way. That's how we kept the Chinese and a lot of the others during the time of the Old West not to be able to vote. It's part of our history. Mm-hmm. But why don't we teach that? Because we don't want to know it. It's all propaganda that we're going to twist the narrative to fit our directive to give you something. That's like with CPS saying we're here to help children. Then prove to me you help children when every statistic they run on you is destruction. There's no positive outcome. CPS is a hole that should not even be filled or touched by the federal government or by the state. This is something community-based, unless there's a crime.
No, but
otherwise, you're in my home.
Their whole mantra is we're here to protect the children. If you were here to protect the children, you would respect their boundaries.
Yeah, like the Fourth Amendment of get out of my fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
How many times they've been in and out of houses? Foster care people, listen to me. When you sign that contract that you have to violate your Fourth Amendment of letting people in your home to get those kids to contract with the state, you realize that's against the law, right?
No,
they're coercing you into violating your constitutional rights or giving up a right in exchange for money or anything else. They're buying your constitutional right by entering without having any of those things, or even be able to be considered as a foster care, let alone under foster care. You're giving them away permission to come in and out as they please to check on these kids, whereas under the law you're protected that every time you enter my home as CPS or any government worker requires a warrant or court order each and every fucking time you enter. Why have they violated the Constitution under family law that they're doing under the states of getting into the fucking home, that all of a sudden we're in the house and we get to tell mom how to live, how to raise kids, what kind of food's in here, why do your kids have this, how come there ain't no Fruit Loops or cherry, we don't do dye stuff, and then the child's being abused, they're not getting stuff that all the other children are getting.
Or, they just kick us out of our home. I mean, that's also...
Oh yeah, they'll just remove you out of your home that you're paying for, your tax for, and everything else, and say, go live over here that says you have a house. Oh wait, that's a business rated at that. Now you're looking at your county code commission, or your county commission that has zoned something, the zoning commission, as being residential or commercial, that you're now saying the courts have more power than to make you change a qualification of that. I mean, that's a lawsuit itself against, like I said, the zoning commission could have, as we'll say in our case, against CPS, because you made somebody go live in a commercial property that wasn't zoned for residential and didn't have the things, let alone, as you guys all know, my condition. How much worse do you think that made me when I didn't have access to a stove or this or that to cook a particular way for a heart patient?
Oh yeah. So you guys, I get what you're saying about the body cameras, and personally, I don't necessarily disagree with you. It would be a good idea. However, we'd be more likely to keep them honest if more of us just hit that record button on our phones. I mean,
guys, record.
Exactly, Vinny. Yes.
Listen, cameras, home security cameras, isn't always for keeping out criminals, somebody to break in. It is to hold your government officials on you. To be honest with you, Herbert, I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to say it has gotten so bad in this country right now. What you need to do is have a body camera on you and invest in one yourself and record it all fucking day long. You'd be surprised what that camera will catch throughout the day when you review it.
I'm sorry, I don't think you can trust CPS even with body cams. I just don't think they're trustworthy enough. I think they'll screw with it. I mean, we've had so much video evidence disappear just in our case alone because people they just destroyed it or got rid of it or copied over it or it just disappeared. You're going to be better off to record for yourself.
It's funny you say that, because in our own CPS case, my sister's report from when they went to her house for a kingship placement thing disappeared. They don't know where it went.
Right? Nope, they never do.
But yet it's funny how
they're still looking into her bank account.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And those are felony charges, because once again, why is the state holding on to stuff? And there's the other thing that I have a huge question about: why are cases so fearful to go to a federal courtroom to address the constitutional issues? But here's the thing: your CPS attorney, your judge or magistrate, those three, those people work for the state government, okay, or subcontractor. It is a requirement that especially judges or magistrates, when the Constitution comes up, they are required by their very oath to run to the aid of the Constitution and to make sure it is upheld. To not do so or to stand idly by is a very act of treason itself. Guys, that's law.
So
let me ask you this time: when was the last time your local sheriff put a judge or magistrate in handcuffs, or a CPS worker for doing what they did? Where's our sheriffs is my other question. Where's your duly elected sheriff that's supposed to uphold the Constitution and not protect you just against invaders, but that includes you against your government, your elected officials for government? We'll reiterate that, not government, because we are the government. We the people. They are our elected and appointed officials, and that's all there is to it. And or officers, whatever you want to call them. And there's multiple range. Actors, you can use the word actors to cover all their lingo. They just changed the name. It means the same fucking people. It's just got a different title. I mean, you've seen that happen all the time. You don't believe me that has happened? Go look up what the meaning of the word gay means in the 1920s versus what it means now. Tell me that words aren't changed for a reason.
So
It's a game.
So now that you said that, Gunner, I can say what I was going to tell you earlier. And I know Darren's probably going to be like, he didn't. Yes, I did, Darren. Tonight, I drafted up my under color of law and I served the attorney.
Oh.
Ooh.
For Constitution violations.
Guys, they're playing a game with some of it. And there's a lot of lawyers out there that want to do a lot of the good things. But as soon as they come onto the scene, you have a degree, you have this, you have that, either get with another firm and learn the ropes for a while or clerk for somebody. And then it's all procedure and filing paperwork. There's no, I mean, half of them don't even know with half of them with licensing. They're so lazy. Hey, it comes down to, did you know that your attorney or the attorney for CPS and one, your magistrate and or your judge is required by the Bar Association to turn over their card and not practice law while they're sitting on the bench. They're not supposed to do that. And they're also supposed to have to serve in that capacity is a public license to serve as a subcontractor or even a GAL. If your GAL doesn't own and have both a private and or public license, they're not allowed in that courtroom. Uh-oh, we got a problem. Now, yes, the bar will hold the license for the person when they're decide they become a judge and they want to go back into private practice. Yes, they don't lose any of their capabilities, but there's kind of supposed to be a severance between it. But not all judges and magistrates are doing that. And that's where they need to be called to the carpet because they need to be held accountable to the same rules as everybody else across this country. So you and I, as the American that we are, when we go before some of these things, we want somebody that's fair and impartial. In our particular case, a magistrate, let me tell you how bad it was. I'm sitting over here. We're sitting in some waiting rooms across from where we entered for our side of the courtroom. I'm right across the hall, doors open, chilling out. You know, my attorney went to the bathroom, it's a small conference room, left the door open because it was, I think, a little cold or a little warm. And there walks out both GALs, the CPS attorney, and the magistrate and my ex-wife all having a meeting in the hallway without her attorney or without my attorney at all outside the courtroom, not in judges' chambers, anything else. Isn't that a rule that they're not supposed to do that? But they did it anyway because they never figured they would get caught.
I don't think your ex had an attorney yet that day.
No, she didn't. But there was the two GALs, the CPS attorney and her, and the magistrate walking down the hall. Matter of fact, the GAL, it was so clear that I know it happened because the GAL for her kids come over and shut my door because I had no business listening on their conversation that they were having illegally. And then there's cameras there, but they're watched by somebody. They're not recorded. Conveniently.
That woman's
See how all this plays
She's
together?
all the way in like 100th circle. I don't even have 100 circles.
Kim, listen, they violate everyone's right. That's exactly what we're doing. Matter of fact, we can prove in a court of law that every state and every county across this nation does violate your constitutional rights because we have the hard evidence that they printed they have the right to do it. And
Yes.
Not only are they doing it, they're exercising it, and these judges or anything else, that's why they're in bed with these judges and magistrates, because a lot of people are crying constitutional rights violations, and the court is required to address them when they're brought to the court. Instead, these lower courts are looking over constitutional issues which they have no jurisdiction on, and when you bring it up to the court about a constitutional issue, your court case by law is supposed to stop because it is pertinent to the case. Give you a reason why. If they've entered to your home with no warrant, no court order, no emergency, and they've been in your house once, twice, three, for each one's a charge against them. Real simple. If they've come in and done that, there's a doctrine out there called fruit from a poisonous tree. When they came into your house and violated your Fourth Amendment and 14th Amendment rights of coming in there and questioning you and your children on private property without those things, they committed a felony. When they committed a felony, any evidence that anybody collects after that is inadmissible in court under fruit from the poisonous tree. How do you prove that you had an illegal entry? I need to prove it. Go to your facts report. Say, Your Honor, it's not what we have, it's what is missing. Where's your court order? Where's your warrant? And understand that warrant has to have a first person, when you produce it, that has testified before a judge that it is legit and that they are testifying to the fact they'll testify in court, and present them here this day for this court hearing a right to face your accuser. Any of those exist? Is there an emergency documented in their facts report? None of them. And if any of you CPS workers are watching this, I dare you to go change it in all your reports. You know why? Every little keystroke you put in there, those IT people, yeah, they're really good at saying when you changed or you modified that document, and there ain't a thing you can do about it because it's built into the damn program.
Yeah, and here's one for them to their limitations. Okay, while judges can participate in administrative function, they must still uphold their primary responsibility of fair adjudication and cannot use their administrative power to influence the outcome of the case.
That's funny.
That is their limitations, people, and that's where you need to get them.
Yeah.
Yep. Listen,
yes, they do. They will threaten you. So that's a really hard one, because when you're in the middle of the situation and you're being threatened, you're not thinking very clearly. And I know because I went through it. And all you can think is, oh my gosh, either I'm going to get in trouble or my kids are going to be in trouble. What do I do? And so you kind of, and that's what it's for. That's their psychological manipulation. They want you twisted up to where you're not thinking clearly. They want you docile. They want you compliant. They don't want you saying no. They don't want you holding your boundaries. They don't want you, they don't want you understanding what's going on in that minute. They want you completely compliant, because then they can do what they are there to do.
So now I'm going to chip in I'm going to tie some history with this one. Guys, this is Project Paperclip. Now let me make the comparison and show you why. This is no different than a concentration camp. Is what they're doing to your family is doing the most unseemful thing. You may starve for food, or they are going to starve you, and financially, they are going to rip everything about your core, the family, the peace, the things, the peace you had in your home. Your home was your castle. Your castle's now been destroyed and penetrated. You'll never be able, most people you talk to when you have CPS come to home, they just want to move. They can't, there's too many bad memories of CPS doing evil things in that house. That's 90% of it. But we'll understand too, the thing I can tell you guys is, if you have any interaction with any government official, law enforcement, CPS, this and that, hit that record, and you have a legal right to do it. You can just announce, I'm recording you. When it comes down to that, it's Fourth Amendment. See, this is where your public education system is part of this system of corruption. Why? How did you not know your constitutional rights to quote them when somebody came at the door?
Yeah.
Why do they hate homeschoolers so bad? What is the biggest topic most homeschoolers deal with, even religious ones? Constitutional rights. Why? First Amendment for the religious organizations. You wave that flag, watch things disappear.
They do, but let's have a little disclaimer on that, because I was raised in that and I didn't know. Not because I wasn't taught, but because of how they come at you. Sometimes you're not thinking very clearly. It didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
Because I had something else in my mind that I was dealing with in that moment. It didn't occur to me.
It's part of it. Once again, this is why it's very specific on how entering the home is, so that doesn't happen. You got the court order, the warrant, this and that. You're not knocking at my door and asking permission to come in. No, that goes to intent. I never called you. You're supposed to be The same as police or anything else. You got a report, you can come investigate. Doesn't mean you get into the house or do any of this stuff. That and to address this with Kim,
They don't. They
Kim,
okay.
or
So they
Debbie, I'm
can't.
sorry, it was Debbie.
Well, hold on. Yeah, Debbie, but Kim. Okay, so they can't tell you what's right for your kids. They don't know
No.
what the best interest of your child is. What they're doing is they're working off of their paperwork. Their paperwork has the parameters and the guidelines. Their paperwork has the checklist of what to look for and what not to look for. And so many check marks is whatever. Like, and if you will notice, I don't know if any of you noticed this, I don't know if your caseworkers ever did this. The caseworkers that we dealt with were constantly checking in with their superiors.
Yep. And I also noticed that the GAL is constantly talking to CPS.
Yes. So your caseworkers
conflict of interest right there.
constantly checking in with their whoever is directly above them, and those people are probably checking in with whoever is above them. So there's a chain of command there. It's very cultish. Like they don't want them going off script.
Yeah,
So
that's probably why they've hired so many caseworkers in my case, because every single one of them I've served under Colorado law.
Yeah. So guys, don't forget to hit the like and follow on our program. Stay tuned to our show every Sunday at 9:30. Just that little plug. Hit the like and share. Check out all of our other shows that are on this particular channel. We'd love to have you guys on there, guys. This is about information and healing. This is just a little plug, a little commercial. We try to do this in between to bump our numbers up and get the words out. I want to address something that Debbie says. Debbie says they love to threaten you. And do not let them else. They will call the police. That's what they've told me. Let me tell you something. Let me address this very specific. Federal case law on your constitutional rights specifically says, this is the judge's words, not mine. You must have a court order or a warrant. Other federal case law states that an anonymous tip is not enough to get a warrant. That's already been determined also. Cops are not allowed to get involved in civil matters. CPS is there, and you're there under the guise of civil court is what they're going to find, not criminal court. A cop has no business unless the crime's there. Record the cop. If that cop assists, aids, or anything. Let's go back to that case law. The case law directly, specifically was about a CPS worker and an officer of the law that entered the home with no warrant, no court order, and no emergency, broke into the house, and then questioned them and the children. This case got brought to the court. The judge turned around and says, it is very well established Fourth Amendment case law of what is expected to come into the home and the sanctity of the home. But the fact that without those things, unless you meet those three criteria, and the emergency is described as life-threatening or immediate danger. In other words, it must take intercession or somebody's going to get hurt, and not your feelings, evidence of it. I saw a gun to somebody's head. That's enough to enter. Little things and stuff like this. Listen to what the judge said after that. Everything else is coercion and unconstitutional. It's a felony. If they show up and come into your house multiple times, that is multiple counts of Fourth Amendment and 14th Amendment violations, and it is a felony for each instance. Yes, they will bury it every time for CPS, but when you get to the courts, and I hope somebody hears this, you say, I have a constitutional rights issue. And if you find an attorney or you go pro se, however you decide, but find you somebody that has a license to practice in federal court that is different from your state court, okay? And there's public and private on both also. Understand why? Because the U.S. Attorney's Office, your district attorney's office, all have to have a public license to practice publicly. They are not practicing privately. They can own both, but if you're doing public, you cannot do private, okay? They kind of just the way, some of the different things within the laws go through all 50 states. If you're doing public service, but it was very specific, bring the cops. Because then I'm going to ask the officer with my phone and my thing, has there been a crime committed that you're here? Well, I got a call from CPS. You do realize that is a civil matter and not a criminal matter, and you have no legal right to be here. I suggest you go. As a matter of fact, take these 2 trespassers with you. And I'm filing trespassing charges. Why? They don't have a right to be there. Well, they have a right to investigate, but they don't have a right into my home or on my property if I ask them to leave. There's no warrant or court order or emergency. So you want to lose your qualified immunity and sue you and take everything you've got and all the hopes and dreams of your family. I got no problem doing that. I'll empty your damn bank account and you'll never work in law enforcement or around children ever again, because I can do that. But you got to fight in the right courts. We are tying up too much, in the game of each and every state is to tie you up in state court, even to the point they say you have to exhaust all your possibilities within your state realm before you can go to federal court. Well, not if it's a federal or constitutional issue. They don't have jurisdiction. They can't hear the case. But a lot of times I've heard a lot of people turn around and say, I mentioned it during my case and this and that. Did you mention it on the record? Was it done in the questioning? Was it addressed by your attorney? That's a good thing to put on record to prove that it was going on at that time and you've been waving that flag the whole time. We have. Yeah. It's bullshit.
Herbert, I don't know what you mean by making ourselves a target of CPS, because I doubt that any one of us put signs on our foreheads or on our backs to say, hey, come bother me, come fuck with my family. A lot of these are extenuating circumstances. Nobody is out here.
Or Herbert, how can you take and avoid somebody doing anonymous tips on you for a neighbor that don't like the way you cut your grass? Or you got into an argument, or the way the garbage was put out. You don't tell me that happens? There's thousands of calls that come in every day to CPSs across here that they even have their own filter system to even see if it's legit. Now, they're going to look for reasons for it to be legit, for a way to get in. But there's a lot of times it gets harassing with even family members if they don't like it, mother-in-laws, this and that. They'll call on the family. Guys, there's reports of it. Oh, they're not doing what I think should be done. Well, here's the beautiful thing. It's only children that matter. What's it matter about anything else? What anybody else takes and thinks. It's what they are and what's the best interest for them. Their families. Unless a crime's been committed or something's been damaged, you can prove in a criminal case, fuck off. But the states have allowed them to run around in the civil courts and be the lowest form of law. We'll call it the lowest form of law because the accountability is so minuscule that the states are making tons of money on it. Why? If I get you involved in this, what ends up happening usually in a case like this, Sharon, Benny? What have we all experienced here? What's the first thing they push for? How soon are you getting divorced?
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
why?
Did you go through that too? Yeah, we went
Everybody
through that.
does.
Yep, they do. They push it up here a lot.
Get divorced. Yeah. Why? CPS is now in charge of your children until the age of 18. When you get divorced and you're involved in a CPS case, they will be around there. You go on the thing.
I mean, I think part of that though is they know inherently, and I might get a little bit of flack for this. And as somebody who's gone through widowhood and now solo parenting apart from my husband, I'm sorry, but we're more vulnerable without our husbands.
And Herbert, what you said about Herbert's not going to get a call. I'm glad you say that, Herbert. But understand that may be a different method of training. People are being trained today. There's actually classes, and we know about classes during these conventions they go to for CPS and police officers, that they take classes on how to gain entry with difficult parents and or difficult people. It's about getting into your house on your Fourth Amendment and how to coerce your way in and cover your tracks. Well, they gave me permission. They did this. They did that. That doesn't apply when actual case law is applied.
Yeah.
Which now, because of the Chevron doctrine, we must go back to case law.
Right. But I do think that they literally try to separate couples because, one, they know you're stronger together. Two, they know mom is more vulnerable without dad. Three, your kids are more vulnerable without either parent. I mean, it's a numbers game. It's a divide and conquer. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true.
And people laugh at most people when you would mention things like MK Ultra and some of those other things. And listen, guys, if you don't know anything, and I've explained this, people freak out about P. Diddy and the tunnels and a lot of those other things. You guys do realize Hollywood Hills was built on top of an old decommissioned Air Force base that was in California, and those tunnels are airport tunnels. They go back and forth under the causeways as they always have in almost any airport, major airport. It was shut down and was bought. The whole base was bought by one person. It was converted over into residential living on the airports and everything else. When they could utilize the runways to use the streets, they did that. They tried to incorporate a lot of things, but if you look at just the design and everything, this is all documented in public record, is what we're talking about.
Where are you going with that tangent, hon?
Huh?
Where
Well,
are you going with that tangent?
okay, so what it comes down to is a lot of those stories that come on, that you got to understand, these people that want these children, is the end result is they have resources and ways to hide and keep it out of the limelight or distract us with other things. And when we're talking about the MK Ultra and some of the other things, this is just a spinoff of MK Ultra that's they're teaching CPS, is to play mind games with you. It's like changing certain things and telling you a certain commercial or this movie with Aladdin never had Sinbad in it or anything else. And most of us are over here like, I remember watching the damn thing. I know that movie exists, and it's making a generational gap issue to where it makes you seem like the older people are saying, hey, that didn't happen. That ain't true. And the media is telling you one thing. The younger people are saying, oh, look at these senile old people. We can't trust them because they can't even remember what was going on in their own childhood. Do you see how this is?
Oh, wait, divide and conquer? Isn't this what I was just saying? Listen, families are stronger if you can keep the line going as far as you can go. It's just true. But again, it comes down to boundaries. I mean, if somebody is willing to walk through your boundaries, they're not a safe person. They don't belong there, no matter how closely related they are.
But establishing boundaries is one thing. Guys, let's talk about this, and this is the hard part. Is you can establish them, but how you stand by those boundaries when they're crossed, clearly communicating what will happen when you cross that boundary to everyone. Don't assume anything. Have these conversations with people. You're in this part of the circle, and this is what it means to me. If you violate me, I've got no problem in a heartbeat taking you from 2 to 6 in a heartbeat. I find out something. The rest is up to you and based off your actions and what you do for trust. Don't manipulate me. Don't lie to me. And all those are the people I'm going to start cutting out. And when we start doing that together collectively, we all of a sudden, well, why don't you have this and that? Well, I don't have to tell them everything. You know what? There was some personal things that some boundaries were crossed, and I didn't feel comfortable anymore. And it's just that simple when you have that conversation. No gossiping, no anything else. There's a polite way. We had a personal issue. Some boundaries were crossed, and we had to part ways, and that's just the way it is. I'm not going to think twice about it.
Yeah.
Why? Because if they wouldn't have hurt me, now, one, do I forgive them? Yes, I forgive them. It's up to God, the Creator, to take and deal with this and that. My job is just to move on, but it doesn't mean I have to trust you. Because I forgive you doesn't mean I ever have to let you in my life again.
Well, it's not even about being hurt, because feelings is one thing. I mean, we're going to get our feelings hurt all the time. It's whether or not there's respect. It's the lack of respect that's the problem. But also remember that people go through different seasons in life, and just because somebody is toxic during their 20s doesn't mean they're going to be toxic in their 40s. We all grow and we learn and we move on in life through different things. And sometimes people have to learn the hard way. And just because somebody is toxic for you doesn't necessarily mean they're toxic for somebody else. So having some grace and understanding in some of that is probably, that's another hard part of it, but it's also important to understand, like, just because somebody disrespects your boundaries yesterday and you had to remove them doesn't mean that they won't do the work and heal and come back and apologize years later and be
They
a
didn't need to.
wonderful person
Yeah.
to have in your life later. I mean, people do have that opportunity. Not everybody takes it, but people do have that opportunity.
Well, and some of that comes into awareness. Sometimes you don't realize how things affect other people. And here's where a conversation between Sharon and Benny and I have had is you don't realize your decisions and your actions today, how many people in your life or people you know or don't know does it affect on what you've done throughout the day? You have no clue. I mean,
It's true.
that's a huge thing. You don't understand the thing you're going through. Give you an example with CPS, direct, cause and effect. It's not their fault. The kids are caught in the middle with half of this stuff most of the time, especially when they're younger, that CPS comes in and does these things. They don't know what to do or anything else. The parents are besides themselves. And CPS is over here just making money, just causing fucking damage with, no thing. It's not innocent until proven guilty. It's this and that. None of this should happen unless there's positive thing. We shouldn't even be bothering families unless there's some absolute. Well, that still puts them in harm's way. If there was ever anything really truly there. But that goes a lot into, once again, we're not teaching boundaries. Your public schools aren't teaching boundaries. As a matter of fact, they do everything to cross boundaries.
They do.
You must.
It's actually been a really interesting, I wouldn't say experiment, but so Gunner's kids were all public schooled, and mine have been homeschooled since early. They're second generation homeschooled. And the differences that we find sometimes between them, even though there's a huge age gap, but some of the things you think these adult kids should know, they don't have a clue, and mine are just fine with. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like.
But now, listen, teenage kids, though, they'll surprise you and believe that you won't think they're listening. I know of a case specifically, especially Sharon and I have talked about a case where a teenager came in and just, I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to talk with you. I don't have to. I know my rights, even though nobody around him did. He still stood up for his rights. Matter of fact, from my understanding, when an officer finally got involved, chewed out the parent for not standing up for the kids' right, which is what a parent's supposed to do, is stand up for the constitutional rights of your children. And, the child just, fought back of anything. But there's some other details to that we won't talk about because we don't want to take and put the cat out of the bag. But there's some things that are going on that people don't realize.
Interesting because the public school system does not teach your kids this. And I think my point with that is we have to. Like, as parents, we have to.
They're not teaching constitutional rights in any school or classroom. This is something that needs to be done at home, this is sure.
We need to learn for ourselves so that we can pass it on.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of us weren't taught either.
Well, and once again, this is why it's important, even for people that have their kids in the system or don't in the system. This is a great platform to reach out to you. Even if anything is not for CPS, but to get some education on how our system works, how the laws are being broke, what the Constitution says, how to go about things. These are resources that, let's put it this way. If I would have had half of what I know now back then, it'd been a whole different story. But one thing CPS does is blindside you. It's called a blindside rush, is what they call it. That's why they show up to your house unannounced and anything else and all these other things that they do. Now, some states will say, well, I call first and I get permission. No, the intent was you still call. I don't want you here. For yours, you should be CPS should be saying from the very beginning, we heard about your situation. We're here to help if you'd like us. It's optional. It's just some resources and have a nice day. You'd probably blow them off. If you treat them like dominoes. Hey, I got your discount offer in the mail. I've seen your commercials. I've seen all these other things and this and that. I still don't like your product. But now you're being force fed, we'll say a particular brand or something, you know what I'm saying, down your throat, which is CPS does it. I see y'all grinning back there. Guys, I'd love to have this show. I'd love to pick up on some deeper parts of this comments. Sharon, thank you for being on our show. And
Oh, hey, real quick.
Yeah.
Do we put like our email or something out there in case people have questions or they want to like follow up on some of it? Because I don't mind reaching out to people if they have more questions about some of it.
Yeah, guys, you can reach out to basically anybody here on the show or any information if you want to get a hold of Sharon. I think just get a hold of the show. The show has all of our resources. I think Vinny's got your information, so Vinny can share that around. I think everybody's got mine. That's pretty much going through there.
Okay.
Uh, Guys, just don't forget. Also, we are also looking for when we're coming through this case. We're looking for people that enjoy going down rabbit holes to where we can give you a little bit of direction and kind of like we've already found what we need. We just need it from all other states or case, those type of things. Guys, we're building a huge case. Reach out to Darren, myself. I think Kim's on there, Vinny. I mean, the idea is putting all this together, of running down these rabbit holes. I know it's a lot for Darren and I to go through a lot of these things. We compare notes constantly, me and Kim, me and Vinny. I talk with Sharon, but there's so much we need together for this case because, like I said, when we get to that point, we want to hammer them with so much hard evidence and ask those questions that most of you go, why is this even allowed? Those are the questions we're going to bring to the federal court. But as soon as we get this done, it's on, and it's enough to shut down CPS across this country with the crimes they have, because you can't get past it. And with our new administration being sworn in tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, that's right, tomorrow is the swear in of our 47th president of the United States. Guys, I'm excited. I know there's a lot of changes. I think you guys have seen the TikTok stuff coming back and forth. Some of those things, guys, we're in for a lot of changes. But here's the other thing: the point of this particular show is knowing how to heal, and part of this is starting to set some boundaries, understanding what circles are, teaching those to our kids, as well as teaching our kids our constitutional rights, and letting them know where they stand. And what bigger disgusting thing to look at another person, especially with CPS, of some of those things of this was a child, and if you're protecting children, then you answer me this: why are you destroying their rights along the way to protect them? You need to answer that question, because here's the hard evidence that says otherwise. Guys, it's been a great show. I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to Sharon, once again, thanks for being here. Vinny, appreciate it. We'll stick around after the show. You want to get together or something real quick, or you just want to be backstage and hang out?
Or you can call me when you're done saying goodnight to your wife first.
I'm getting tired.
You get more out.
Yeah.
All right, guys, it's been a great show. Thanks, Vinny. Sharon, thanks. Guys, it's been wonderful. Thanks for joining us here at Gunning for CPS. Check us out next week. Same bat channel, same bat time. We look forward to it. Invite your friends. Let's talk about the show. Let's get people in here that are dealing with CPS, and not only dealing with CPS, but have yet, even if they've got young children, we need to start educating younger parents exactly for what we're doing, and educate them and give them the battles and the tools to do, especially young parents that are already ultra confused with a brand new child in the house, and it's their first child. They're on a learning curve. Guys, we need to start educating those people. It's been wonderful. You guys have been awesome. And guys, we'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and follow. And guys, have a great night. We'll see you again next week.
Constitution, strong blood won't lie. No more corruption, let freedom fly. Loud and on fire, won't back down. Keeping the faith here in this town. Apple pie dreams under a southern sky. American man with a fierce battle cry. Stand up, fight for justice, we demand. Gunning for CPS off our land. For family truth with the strong hand. Time to rise, take a stand. Corruption falls like shattered glass. Together we stay.